Hi, I'm the Space Quest historian. And don't worry, you've tuned into the right podcast. This is the Seat Designers. I just wanted to leave a quick note for you here before we start the actual episode. I am hosting this episode that you're about to hear, and I'm terrible at it. I'm really, truly awful at it. And I just wanted to apologize before we start the episode. Because today's episode is about game engines. And we have a special guest on the show called Randell Trulson, and he will introduce himself in just a moment. But the episode is about game engines, or well, it was supposed to be. But the actual talk about game engines, the topic, the main course, if you will, doesn't actually come into play in the podcast that you're about to listen to until, well beyond the halfway point. You might even think we don't actually get around to the topic at all. That's for you to decide. That's not for us. We're just here to facilitate some good-hearted fun that may or may not, in fact, be on topic. So I just wanted to clarify that I am a dreadful host, and Gareth is drunk.
Well, hello there. That was my Frederick impression.
Yeah,
Is
you're
everyone
stealing
impressed?
my enthusiasm.
Yeah. Welcome to Seat Designers Season 4, Episode 4. I just had to count that on my fingers. I was like, how many are we up to? 4. That's right, 4. And we are joined today, of course, by my esteemed colleagues. Say hello, Frederick.
Hello?
And Dr. Gareth Millwood.
Hello.
Now, Doctor, you've brought a special present for the children today. Could you describe it in painstaking detail, please?
Yes, I am exactly, Fred. I am drinking a bottle of Paul Masson
The
California
French
White.
Champagne has
Is it
always been
fermented, the
celebrated
bottle?
for its excellence. There is a California
Can we
shut him off the call,
champagne
right?
by-
Yeah, we can do that. We can totally mute him. Whoops, finger slipped.
Anyway, yeah, it's sickeningly sweet, and
You
it's
don't
called
appreciate
California
art,
White.
you fucking Philistine.
Let's kick him out.
It's not. They don't mention what it's made from. It's just California White. So yes, I am drinking the wine made famous by Orson Welles.
How does it taste?
Well, sweet. And,
Really, really sweet and flat. Well, I mean, of course, it'd be flat because it's white
So
wine, but
basically,
it's
basically like Orson Welles at the end of his career.
yes, it's very alcoholic, very sweet, and a bit flat.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but the back of the label actually does not mention berries anywhere.
No, it doesn't mention what grape it is. It just says that Paul Masson emigrated to California in the 1870s, bringing with him years of
Why does he
winemaking
get to
tradition
do this
and
when I
heritage.
don't?
From his native France, he also brought cuttings and techniques that produced some of the finest wines in the Central Coast region. Contains sulfites. So there we go.
That's basically it. So we were kind of brainstorming in our little Facebook chat earlier today what it actually contains, and my guess was it's made out of squeezing pensioners' testicle sweat into a bottle. Does anyone else have a good idea?
No, but
I mean,
I think you should introduce the other person in the
Yeah.
Skype chat before he decides this is too uncomfortably awkward. And I've decided it's too uncomfortably awkward. So
Actually, that's a good idea. We might get some feedback for this because we did have a topic, but I'd rather talk about pensioners' testicles. So welcome to this episode, Mr. Randell Trulson. Did I get that right? Randell Trulson.
Yes, spot on.
Oh, great! So we you almost have the same last name as my first name.
yeah, it kind
Have
of.
you noticed how whenever there's somebody on anything, Trolls' first question is, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yeah, it's kind of my thing.
I've noticed.
Okay, but anyway, we should probably get this out of the way. Randell Trulson is the CEO of formerly Neuron Studios, now Giggle Horse Games. Is that correct?
Giggle Horse.
Giggle Horse. Sorry. See him? Yeah, and I even had it on.
Yeah, the reason you ask is because you usually get it wrong. It's Cecil, by the way.
Right, and I was wrong. Oh, fuck. So I should probably stop talking and turn the mic over to our esteemed guest and have him rattle us off his rather impressive list of credentials. Go, sir.
I don't know if it's that impressive, but I've done stuff. Basically, I started off wanting to do video games when Pac-Man came out, and I basically wasted my entire youth at the arcade. That's what happened. And, since I didn't have an education at that point, I figured I might as well, do something that was more in keeping with what I actually knew about, which was video games. But so I thought, well, you know what? I'll be a commercial artist because shit, that's fun. And so I went to college to become a commercial artist. And then I had a cousin who went and got like a master's or a doctorate in commercial art, while I was in college. And he ended up selling like art supplies to elementary schools. And
were there drugs in them?
No. Then that would be appealing, but the drug-free supplies. I'm like, wow. So I'm like, he went to college for 8 years, so he can sell fucking gum erasers to 6-year-olds. So I think I'm gonna do a career change, and so at about that time, my brother had got like a computer, a Tandy 1000 SX. I don't know if you know what that is, but
oh yeah,
it's basically like a big fucking hairdryer, really, really heavyweight hairdryer.
As opposed to what we had in Europe, which was the big fucking bread box, the Commodore 64.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the Tandy, man, it's like you didn't even, as much electricity as it ate up, the great thing was that you didn't have to like do any heating or anything in the room you were in, because it's basically sucking all the cold air through it and just heating the whole room while you sat in it. But my brother got Space Quest, and come to find out, we actually somehow through some, I can't remember exactly what, but we ended up knowing Mark Crow, and so then some other game company people came around, and then one day I saw that like one of them was driving like a Ferrari 308, which is like the shittiest Ferrari that they make. But at the time I didn't know, because it's like that's what they had on like Magnum PI, so everybody's like, oh my god, it's a Ferrari, it's like basically it's the highest priced golf cart in the world, this one, but I'm like, wait, so what do these people do? I'm like, oh, they make video games? I'm like, God. I'm like, well, how do they do it? And I'm like, well, they write code. And so that's when I decided to change over from doing commercial art to being a software engineer. Oh, and by the way, in high school, I completely failed like every computer course I ever took. Like,
sounds familiar to me.
I mean, it was a total joke. And I don't know, I was like, I didn't even get to complete college, and then I got an internship working at the company changed names like 50 times. It was NCR, and then it ended up becoming Symbios Logic, and then it ended up becoming LSI, and basically I did software development for hardware, so I was a device driver developer. Which
dear God.
That's like whatever the lowest, when you hit B on the like elevator button, like in hell, that's it. Like E50. Like you're at the lowest level of hell if you're doing device drivers.
Did you do device drivers for DOS?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh dear God.
Yeah, we were the guys that invented SCSI. I mean, I didn't invent it, but so we did device drivers for SCSI, IDE. I did some of the device driver work for the Twain drivers for flatbed scanners, crap like that for HP.
Oh yeah, my dad had one of those hairdryer shaped ones that you had to move like a dustbuster down over the paper.
This must have been a European dad thing. We had one of those as well.
Yeah. Basically, you drag it and hope that it resembles something.
And he would sit there with a manual and just go, "What the fuck is a Twain driver?" I remember Mark Twain. Did he write this?
Yeah, actually, the name I can't remember, but the acronym Twain actually stands for like there's no other acronym left or so. I can't remember exactly. I'm not kidding you. If you look up Twain, you'll find out it actually is an acronym to where we couldn't figure out what to name it, so we picked Twain. I'm not lying about that. And then we also worked.
It's a background.
Is it one of those recursive ones like use, not Unix?
Yeah. I don't think.
Oh yeah. Technology without an interesting name is the.
Yeah, that's it. Right. Yeah. Yep. Because everybody came up with stuff. Yeah. So that's how that got to be. Okay. That way.
So you were
projects like that.
So you were working on some low-level stuff pretty early.
Yeah, we did firmware, a lot of firmware stuff.
Cool.
We were in, we had to do like back in the days where you had to write like 64K device drivers that had to fit on like a 64K NV RAM chip, and your code had to be 100% bulletproof because, I mean, this stuff was going to end up being like run on some server somewhere for like Online America or somebody.
Yeah, and then QEMM could come in and fuck it all up anyway.
That's why it's firmware.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Once it's on chip, you can't touch it.
I was still on the device drivers. Well, as fascinating as this is, what about your game career? I'm slowly moving us onto the topic of the day.
Well, that's when I actually started doing game programming. I wanted to do that from the beginning, and I didn't want to do device drivers the rest of my life because that sucked balls.
You ever want to move into computer science, kids, listen to this first.
It's the most thankless job. It's the most difficult because here's the thing. When you make a device driver, everybody wants, like, nobody questions whether the device driver for their hard drive works or not. Nobody even thinks about that. Because if it doesn't, I mean, Dell and everybody else in the world will just sue your ass. You won't be in business very long. So you have to make it absolutely 100% perfect on release.
And no one thanks you. It's just
I could go up and say, I invented the Twain driver for that flatbed scanner, and they're like, yeah, that's nice. Go fuck yourself. Nobody cares. And then I remember the straw that really broke the camel's back was I did some sort of test lab piece of software, and I remember that they ended up selling it off to like Hewlett Packard and Corvallis, and I got a gift certificate for Western Sizzlin' Steakhouse, which is like, I don't know if you know what that is, but
sounds fancy.
Western Sizzlin' is like Western Sizzlin' is like one step up from a high school cafeteria. I mean,
and
you get in line and you got your tray, and then they got some huge fat lady with 50 zits on her face that just slops shit on your ladle.
It doesn't sound like when you say step that it's actually a quantum leap ahead of a high school cafeteria. It's like this tiny step.
Yeah. So I got like a gift certificate for that, and then we were sitting in a meeting, and they accidentally didn't know that I was in the same meeting or whatever, and they slipped up, and I found out that they had like sold this thing off for like $1 million or whatever to Hewlett Packard. I'm like, so wait, so you get $1 million for some piece of shit that I wrote, but then, and all I get is a $25 gift certificate at like the shittiest place to eat at in the world.
I get a steak with zit sauce.
Yeah, I feel so great. So,
that does sound fairly thankless.
I started making games at home, on the side because, so I was doing college. And then I was also working full-time, doing device driver work, and then I was also doing Neuron Games at the same time. And so I was probably putting in maybe like 4 hours of sleep a night, maybe.
I couldn't cope.
Well, that's not true, because I would come into work and I would basically just stare at my desk and fucking zone out like Peter Gibbons in Office Space. So I would kind of I would do like sleeping with my eyes open. I would just be like, hey.
Did you ever pull the George Costanza where you crawl onto the desk and just sort of perch in there?
No. But
Okay.
we did take extensive lunches. Like we had some always had to go run errands at lunch, which meant taking off and. But yeah, so that's where it was in 2001 that I finally quit. I was working for EMC, which was Crossdoor at the time, and I was doing device driver work again for RAID boxes, and that's the last job that I had that I basically quit to do Neuron full time.
Mm-hmm. And so what has Neuron actually accomplished? For those of you who don't know.
That's a really cold way of asking
about
it.
A billion, about 1 billion years ago, when the Earth was fresh and new, I made this game called the Farm Game, which I don't even know if you can find it at all. It was DOS, and that was the first game that we made. Basically, you're a coyote, and your whole objective was that you just had to run this coyote around and try to grab as many of these chickens and eat them as possible before you ran out of, your stomach ran low and then you died. And
a lesson for the children.
Yeah, it's very violent, very bloody. Like, you grab a chicken. That was the best part of it, is that when you grab a chicken, the animation went on for, 15 seconds of you thrash this chicken around on the screen and bleeding to death. And I didn't know that it was going to do that well, and so the only way of distribution at that time, there was no digital distribution, so the only thing that we knew to do was, ironically, we had a mail-in form. But the problem was that, as good as I was with software, apparently I was retarded with the rest of the way the world worked, and so we had the wrong address for the P.O. box for people to send in their money, so we had no idea how many people actually bought this fucking game. So we dumped it out on Walnut Creek. I don't know if you guys remember Walnut Creek, but
Yeah.
Walnut Creek was this big hub where you could just dump stuff in. It got downloaded 1.7 million times,
wow.
a couple. Yeah, it was just crazy. And then Dave, a friend of mine that actually worked at Symbiosis Logic, also. I think statute of limitations is up on this, so it doesn't really matter.
That's a great episode title.
I'm poised.
Yeah, he was with Neuron with me, and he made the Mr. Hanky screensaver, and that got downloaded I have no idea how many times. The South Park Mr. Hanky screensaver.
I remember that it would jump across your screen, and it will basically leave a trail of poop.
Yeah. So Dave made that, and but of course we could never take credit for it because you don't want them to sue the shit out of you for making something that you had no rights to make.
Did you also make that entire South Park suite that was out there back then? Because I had that. I can't remember what it was called for the life of me, but it had all this bunch of desktop themey shit on it, like that screensaver among them, and sounds, wallpapers, what have you, back in the days where everyone thought you could skin Windows out of sockets and only learned later that you can't.
Yeah. Well, see, that's something new that we learned then, so I'll have to tell Dave about that. We didn't know that it got packaged again like that.
So now you can sue.
Yeah.
A statute of limitations.
So I can sue so I can have money to be, to defend myself in the countersuit from South Park.
Just sitting in the court and all the Viacom lawyers are just staring at you blankly, and you're just sitting there pointing at this dude in the the bleachers. I was going to say, in the audience, you want to talk to this guy?
Owe me money.
I would say the most famous thing out of all the various crap that we built, the biggest thing that we built was we built a game called Filbert Fledgling. At the time, this was okay. I'm never going to do this again. At the time, there was this whole movement in the United States about why don't they make whole. This is when Mortal Kombat came out, and all of a sudden I don't know, Dr. Dobson or one of those Christian people came on and talked about how horrible it is, and it's just going to fuck up the lives of everybody, and children are going to be mass murderers, and but if they play this game, and all of a sudden the sales of that game just skyrocketed like crazy. I mean, it went from a trickle to a roar overnight because this guy said it was a horrible game.
That's what these people are doing, and it's always great. It's the best publicity you could ask for.
Oh yeah. Just look at Grand Theft Auto. Every time they talk about like that coffee shop plugin, I mean, you couldn't even buy one in a store. You go in to get one, and they're all sold out completely. But we made there was this whole thing about like making wholesome games, and so we thought, oh, okay, well, we'll make a cutesy game, and we kind of wanted to go along the lines of like I guess it was Nicky Boom or I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but if you remember that game, so we thought we'd make a platform scroller like that. So we made Filbert Fledgling, which was a family wholesome game, and what we found out is that here's what we found out from that whole thing. People that like family wholesome shit, well, they don't buy stuff for their kids to play video games on anyhow, so fuck them. So
they're all sitting around in Bible study.
Yeah, so it's like so we'd always have people come up and say, well, why don't you make something wholesome, and then maybe we would buy something like that. So we made something wholesome, and then they're like, well, we don't buy games for our kids anyhow. Well, go fuck yourself then. So Filbert Fledgling literally is the largest platform scroller ever to be built that we're aware of. There are 2,200 non-repeating screens in this game.
Wow. So it never ends, much like the Bible.
Unfortunately,
there, Trolls.
Yeah. We had a guy get through. I've never actually played all the way through the game, but
testing was a bitch.
Yeah, we left it to other people, but there's actually been someone get through it in 23 hours.
Like straight, because there's no save.
Yeah.
What did you do as far as, when you got going, did you have any kind of framework in terms of the engine, or did you start up from the ground? Yeah, I'm trying to steer us onto the topic, Trolls, because all you're doing is going.
Well, that's really easy.
Thanks, bud.
That one's
absolutely
easy.
Right, and I was wrong.
I always have your back.
Yeah.
That was pretty easy for me because I looked at like how game engines were developed at the time. There was nothing out there. I mean, there's no game engines out there per se. And so, I came from the land of device drivers. We actually did, the company I worked for actually did like some of the device drivers for Diamond, the video card company. So it's like,
I remember that name.
We knew this technology. Yeah, we knew this technology backwards and forwards. I mean, so it's like, shit, I'll just write my own engine. I don't need anybody else's crap. So the first engine that we made to make Filbert with was the Troll engine, and then we had a big WYSIWYG that sat on top of it to make the game that we call it the Hammer Pixie, because every time we get drunk and someone would wake up and their hair's all sticking up, we'd say that the Hammer Pixie visited them in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that was that giggle again. I'm sorry.
So that was the first engine. And then after that, we moved on and we tried to migrate the Troll engine to the Piranha engine, where we moved it from C to C++.
Yeah.
But in the interim of that, a whole bunch of family tragedy shit happened and all that, and so I got sidetracked from that, and so then I just thought, well, shit, we'll just move on. I wanted to look at the C# and see how this stuff works. So we made C#, and then Unity was just coming around about that time, and so I started on the Cortex engine, and I didn't know how good the engine was. I honestly didn't, because I live and I program in a vacuum. I'm the only person that gets to see our stuff, from a code level. So I didn't know how good the engine was, and Intel came around and they said, oh, well, if you run these tests on your game engine, we'll give you a free iPod. And I'm like, great, because, I'll take that shit and I'll take it down to Walmart and I'll trade it in for some useful shit.
Yeah, because the iPod is like, I'll give it a week. Yeah, it's a fad. It'll never turn into anything.
Yeah, it's basically like a paperweight for my desk. And so it's like, well, I can just take it in and trade it in for something. So we did all their tests on the Cortex engine and we sent back the data. And this engineer guy comes back to us and he gets all mad and he's like, if you want to be in the partnership program with us, you can't be doing the stuff you're doing and blah, blah, blah. And he's just going all apeshit on me. And I'm like, what the fuck? What is your problem, It's like, she's like, I didn't fuck your mom or something. I don't know what your problem is. So he's, so they accused us of manipulating the numbers in the data that we sent back.
For your own engine.
Yeah. And so I'm like, because I'm gonna manipulate the numbers so I can get some Chinsky little tchotchke fucking iPod you're gonna send us. Yeah, I'm totally gonna go out of my way to do that. So I'm like, you know what? I don't give a fuck. Here's the executable. Go run the tests yourself. I don't give a shit. So I don't know. I gave it to them, and like 6 months later, they called us up, and they're like, okay, well, we need to have a serious discussion with you. And I'm like, well, what is it? And they're like, well, we ran all the tests on your engine, and we found out you're not lying.
And also, his mom says this regardless.
Yeah, so then they're like, well, so then they actually wanted to talk about investing or possibly buying the company. And so that went on for about a year and a half where we were in negotiations with them. And we got involved in, this is a tragic story, we got involved where we were directly dependent on some technology that they were working on. It was called the Larrabee Project. And is where they were working directly with NVIDIA, where NVIDIA and Intel had got together. Well, lo and behold, all of a sudden, in the middle of this, they just ceased talking to us. Like, I mean, we were down to where we're numbers, where, they had like a price in mind as to what they were going to buy us for and everything. And all of a sudden, everything just ceased. And every time we call, they'd be like, well, we'll have to get back with you. And this went on for like 6 months. I mean, our development and everything halted. I mean, because we thought we were going to get bought out.
This sounds familiar. This sounds like something Axis Software went through when they were doing Tex Murphy Overseer. It's like, hey, we've got a fancy new DVD drive. Intel is going to sponsor you guys, and you get right up to the 95% completion mark on this game, and then suddenly, oh, by the way, see you later.
Yeah,
we don't
radio
give a shit.
silence. It sounds like...
this is worse than that. At the time, here's I'll give it to you in a nutshell. At the time, Intel had bought Havoc. Havoc is like a physics engine.
I recall the name, definitely.
Okay, they're in Dublin, Ireland. But Intel, apparently, the people that purchased it weren't entirely like on what I would call the intellectual scale on the very end, on the right side end. So they didn't know that Havoc actually had to use an existing game engine to sit on top of in order to be useful. They thought it was like a standalone thing.
This is all soapy Tolman, I want a physics engine. Well, you're gonna need a game engine. I don't need two engines. I asked for a physics engine.
And they completely didn't have one. It's like it was kind of like they wanted to. They wanted a car, but they didn't. They couldn't pass a driver's test, kind of thing.
Right.
So. We found out kind of like, sort of through all these meetings, we found out that they were basically, it was to where they needed an engine to, that they wanted to have a game engine that they could plug all this shit together and then say, look, we have a turnkey solution, basically with what like Unity is today or Unreal Engine or something like that. And that's what they were kind of looking to build. And so PhysX was a chipset that NVIDIA was doing. NVIDIA was getting, so Intel was also getting rid of the north side bridge so that way they could put the GPU and the CPU on the same die together, and all this stuff was all going on. Then all of a sudden in the middle of this, all the phone calls and everything ceased, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. Nobody talked to us. Finally, I got to talk to like the VP of like marketing of Corvallis or somewhere, And he said, "Oh, well, we're sorry, but you become like a casualty." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" And we're like, "Well, when we got in bed with NVIDIA got to see what we were working on. And that's when NVIDIA figured out that we had actually stolen patents from them. So that's how the NVIDIA and Intel lawsuit got started."
Ooh.
And if you just you can
Even
just Google,
cunts owe me money.
you can. Oh yeah, well they paid out. You can just look up like NVIDIA and Intel, and like the first things that will pop up is that lawsuit.
Wow,
I mean,
you heard it here first, folks. We're at ground zero.
Okay.
Well, it's not my fault. I'm not ground zero. I'm like that guy. No.
I didn't mean to insinuate it was your fault.
No, I'm the army guy. Where they're like, during World War II, they're like, stand in this ditch and then look at this flash and tell me what you see afterwards. And then they light off a nuclear weapon like a mile away from you. I have no idea. Like, what are we looking for? Oh, you'll know it when you see it. It's like that was us. So
I'm blind now and sterile. How do you?
Yeah, so I'm like, so what's going on with this whole investment buyout? Oh, well, that's all dead. It's like, well, what are we supposed to do? Oh, well, basically, you just go fuck yourself. Basically, that's that's kind of the
sincerely Intel.
I guess we can't really talk about game engines without talking about the act of being fucked vigorously up the ass by someone with a shitload of money.
Well, yeah, I mean. Well, they kind of fuck themselves. I mean, who steals code from a competitor and then invites them to join in partnership with you on a project and then show them the code that you stole that they had patents on? I mean, who does that?
Well, someone who wasn't paying attention, obviously.
Yeah. So Intel's brilliant in a lot of ways, but there's also
Can I steer this conversation someplace? Because as hilarious as this is, we're past the 30-minute mark, I think. And although we have talked about game engines and particularly the engines that you've written, and I do want to get back to that, I think I should just mention in passing that our collective experience in this group with game engines and building games has been, well, I speak for myself when I say I can barely scratch something together in QBasic, and I can do a little scripting in AGS, and that's about where my programming skills stop. My colleagues are a bit better. Fred is actually a programmer, and Gareth is drunk at this point, I think. So,
well, then he's a programmer then.
Yeah, he is.
But none of us have really gotten in there. I mean, I looked over my dad's shoulder when he was programming in assembly language on a Commodore 64, but that was all gobbledygook to me. So yeah. So
in poke.
So actually doing game engines from scratch, I think what I'm really looking for is how do you sit down and decide, well, I want to make games, I should probably build an engine first. Because you said when you started out there were no engines, but I assume once you started talking to Intel and these guys, you said Unity was already coming out. So what made you still?
Well,
yeah,
there were engines. I mean, the Unreal Engine was out at the time, but I think they had like a license, like a one-time license was something like $500,000. So
wow,
that was a good answer.
Yeah, so I'm like, well, let's see. I can either build my own, or I can somehow figure out how to get $500,000 and dump it on a one-time, title. And then if that title flops, I can find another $500,000 and try another title. So it's like,
that was a really obvious answer when I think about it.
Yeah, the Crytek engine came out at the just shortly thereafter, and the Crytek, they were asking like $1 million plus for their license deal.
Well, they were from Croatia; they needed it. I mean, I've heard the stories that they didn't even have money to buy testing machines for the first Serious Sam game. So they basically put out a demo, and before Steam Greenlight and all that, they just basically asked people to test their game because they couldn't do it in house. Oh
yeah, well. I remember Serious Sam.
Yeah, it was. I mean, for a small ragtag group from Croatia who nobody had ever heard of to come out with an engine like the Serious engine, I thought that was. I mean, I'm fascinated with engines, but I don't know how they're made. Let's just put it that way. How do you sit down and make an engine? That's a dumb question. I know.
One of the things that the criteria that I came up with, and this is the problem that I saw with most engines. Most engines are genre specific, very genre specific. And one of the things that really bothered me was like especially like the 3D engines. The 3D engines are very specific to like basically first person shooters. That's basically what they're tailor-made to do. But from a device driver standpoint, from where I come from, I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter if it's 3D or not. The shit ends up on a two-dimensional plane in the end. So I don't care if it is a 3D first-person shooter. It's still going to go to a flat piece of memory in the end. And it's still going to play sounds out of the speaker exactly like Pac-Man did. There's nothing really different as to how the user experiences it. They're still going to look at a flat screen and use, the same speakers and joystick and inputs. So all that stuff is all the same. So I couldn't understand why everybody had to make an engine that was so genre specific. And because one of the big problems was this is a big problem even with DirectX. Like when you would start off, it's like, oh, well, you either had to do it in Direct 3D or you couldn't do a 2D game because it was just too freaking impossible to do 2D graphics because the 3D environment was just so chaotic. And I'm like, this is dumb because it all ends up flat on the screen anyhow. It's all 2D whether you like it or not. So I got to thinking, I'm like, well, why don't someone just make an engine that just handles all this shit and even does a hybrid to where if you want to mix 2D and 3D together, you can, which our engine does. So you can have all this 3D crap going on in the background and then put 2D in the foreground if you want. And most of the engines can now, but that's how you sit down and you say, well, why do I want to build an engine? What do I want to do with it? And then I also said, well, okay, I also don't want to remake the engine. Like, let's say that we make a scroller. Let's say we make a scroller game. I don't want to get done with that scroller and turn around and have to build a whole new engine so I could build a point-and-click adventure game. That's just, to me, that's stupid. It's like reinventing the wheel. So now that they have, dynamic link libraries and stuff like that, I'm like, why don't they just make it to where you can just pull in the module that you need at the time that you need it, and if you need to make something genre specific, then you just make a module to where it will just plug in.
I think speaking of DLL hell, Trolls is having some technical issues, so he's kind of breaking up. Oh, there he is.
I'm back. Skype just had one of its things.
Yeah, we've been talking about Intel. I guess that we should talk about Microsoft at some point, because since they bought Skype, everything has kind of been falling to shit.
I sort of dropped out after the Direct 3D thing was set, but do carry on as if that didn't happen.
I think you said hellos during Randall's talk, which was kind of interesting.
It was weird because everything just dropped. All the audio dropped, and it looked like Skype was still going.
That's not an issue. That's called a feature.
Yes. I mean, I'm used to Skype crashing on me. I'm not used to it fucking me in new and exciting ways like this.
This means that the NSA is listening. But I mean, Randall has already kind of
means
exposed
that they're still working.
Yeah, you've exposed how tech giants like to fuck you up the ass. I guess if you don't mind, I do have kind of a technical question, and this is speaking as a programmer, and it's just because I'm curious, because I program C# and I do medical software. Let's leave that
Speaking
thought
of fucking up.
Yeah, let's leave that thought in the air, guys. I'm in charge of something like this.
At least you said air.
Yeah, do you really want that to happen? Anyway,
if you're
what I wanted to ask you, Randall, is what has your experience been like moving from C and then to C++ and then to C#? Which language do you prefer in terms of getting down to the nitty-gritty of constructing this framework that you make your games in?
In the beginning, I just moved over to C# from C++ to see how it worked on regular application level software. And I immediately had this preconceived idea in my head that because when you come from C++, you're God. So, and you're doing assembly language, inline and stuff like that. You come from, and then when you go to C# Sharp, immediately I didn't really give it a good chance because I just thought, like, you know, I hate you already from the beginning. Like, it's kind of like, I don't know. I just had this preconceived idea that I was going to hate C#, and then when I got in there, I'm like, oh my god, it's like, this is basically like C++, except someone got the idea of, like, because what we used to do in C++ is, like, we used to, like, make a class with a smart pointer with references so that they could deallocate themselves automatically and do garbage collection on their own.
Oh, wow, that's actually pretty interesting because, you know, I just have an AP degree, so, you know, I take garbage collection for granted. Without it, I would be fucked.
Oh, yeah, well, in C++, you have to manage all memory completely yourself. And so then you start doing stuff like, you start getting crafty where you're like, well, I'll make a class that will have references, and every time someone has a reference, the count goes up, and every time it goes down, the count goes down, and when it hits 0, it will actually free up its own memory. And you used to do stuff like that to be crafty.
That's a
and
very...
When I got into C#, I'm like...
Oh, sorry, do go on. Just wanted to compliment your approach to solving that.
you just get tired of doing this shit because 99% of every error you find in C++ is like, oh yeah, I forgot to free up a pointer. Yeah, I'm sorry. It just, you know, it's taken up like 3/4 of the entire OS's, you know, like memory that it had available. Like, we only had 3 gigs and it took up, you know, 2.8 before it crashed. And so, yeah, sorry.
And you also kind of, you know, you mentioned you hanging out at arcades and stuff like that, so I'm kind of getting the vibe that you're also a gamer yourself, so wasting time on all this boilerplate code must have been so frustrating, you know, just this class that there's always there, which ensures that your homebrew garbage collection works.
Yeah, the people that get into game development today, I'm sort of, I guess to make myself sound old, I look at them with such disdain sometimes. Because
we are spoiled.
They complain. I see people on Facebook, like, they'll complain, they'll be like, they have no idea what it's like to be a game developer. The other day I plugged in this car into Unity and it was flip-flopping all over, and I'm like, yeah, well, try writing Unity from scratch, you know, and then see what that's like, and then you can bitch about it, you know.
So would you?
Just to be.
Oh, sorry. Do continue the rant. Fine. I love your rant. So I just never know when I hit an artsy talkie break. But you know, I just wanted to ask whether you actually think that game developers today would benefit to get their hands dirty, so to speak, because you're absolutely right. We are spoiled. You know, everything that I've done is, you know, speaking for myself, I've done games programming in Adventure Game Studio, which is this very simple Java, C++ like scripting language, and everything there is higher level. You know, if you run into an engine limitation, then tough shit, motherfucker. You can't outright fix that. So it's all, you know, it's all a couple of layers above what I would call the nitty-gritty. But do you think that games programmers today would benefit from getting their hands dirty like you did with device drivers way back when?
I don't think that it would benefit for them to get that low. I understand there's this impulse because I had it, you know, when I first got into gaming. The first impulse is that you want to build the game. You don't want to learn any of the prerequisites about, like, coding standards and, you know, and code reviews. You don't want to learn about testing. You don't want to learn about any of that shit. You don't care about it. You just want your game out there.
Yep, that's me.
And so the problem is that they rush right in because they don't have any background. They don't see all the things that can go on, that can go wrong at so many levels. And so what I see is, like, I see a lot of people and they'll program something in Unity, and I've actually seen code from professional studios that just look atrocious. I mean, I would probably fire you if you wrote that code and you worked for me, but I mean, just really horrible looking stuff. And it's just, most all this stuff runs today because, well, you know, because everybody's got like a quad core machine with like 32 gigs of RAM, and so they can basically completely if they were programming in C++, they basically could have their pointers open and just run all day and not release their pointers, and they'll never run out of memory. So you can be so sloppy now, it's unbelievable.
I actually have a question pertaining to that, but yeah.
Sorry, I mean that's one of the things that perhaps adventure games allow you to be a bit more sloppy, is because if you are just dealing with sprites on a screen and clicking a mouse, you don't need to necessarily be as conservative with memory and processor use.
Yeah, you're not pushing 10,000 polygons a second through the
I did actually have a question. First of all, I have a question for Dr. Gareth Millward. How's the plonk?
It's getting more bearable, but it is still sickeningly sweet.
So it's working, is it?
That's kind of me in a nutshell. Kind of bearable, sickeningly sweet.
It sounds a little bit like Donald Trump's hair dye.
Oh,
do you know what? You might be onto something.
Wow,
I'm going to dip a scarf
Trump's
in it and see what happens.
So sorry, my second question had to do with what you were talking about with Unreal Code, because some programmer told me that actually if you hold up Unreal Engine if you hold up the Unreal Engine and the Unity engine against each other, most Unreal games seem to run slowly and a bit like ass, and most Unreal games seem to run pretty smoothly. But actually, if you're a good enough programmer, Unreal is actually the faster engine, because Unreal forces you to get in there, or Unreal has everything in place, all the shaders, all the colors and textures and whatnot, all that looped, and Unreal forces you to get into the engine room and actually code that stuff from scratch. So is that true? Is Unreal actually the quote unquote?
I don't have enough experience to know how Unity is coded versus Unreal. I know a lot of people that work at Unreal, at Epic. But I do know that Unreal has come from a background where they've come more from a traditional background where the people that actually worked on the first Unreal Engine, actually had degrees in computer science from universities, and I kind of get more of a indie sort of a vibe from Unity. I don't know, when I think of Unity, I kind of think more along the lines of Phoenix University, learn at home,
Right, yeah, absolutely right, because Unreal is these big AAA games that get shitty ports and gets pulled off Steam like in a Batman Arkham Knight, whereas Unity seems to be really favored by the indie community. But of course, it's also a very, very different business model, so that probably is a factor. I mean, you've got a personal edition of Unity without as many bells and whistles as the full-blown edition, but you still get a very valuable tool that you probably can't get with the Unreal Engine without selling your soul to Satan.
So that's why I love AGS, because I can just get in there and just click around, and if I run up against one of these cock blocks that Fred mentioned, like something you can't program around in the engine because that's all hard-coded in there, I just have to work out an alternate solution.
We ran into that on StairQuest. I mean, at this point we can say, because it's been out for a couple of weeks, but we have a Yeti in the special edition of StairQuest, which was
the bane of your existence.
It was impossible to program because we're kind of using regions and hotspots and that sort of thing to trigger it, but there are explicit limitations to that, and we also use regions to trigger when the player characters should fall off the stairs, right? So if you've got a limitation there, it becomes impossible to control where do you trigger the Yeti, because it can't be the same region as where you fall off. Meanwhile,
that's exactly another good reason why we decided to make our own engine, because if you make set the rules. Right, if you make your own game engine and something goes wrong, you know where to go to try to fix it, or how to figure out. If something goes wrong and you use an Unreal, it's like, well, shit, here I go. I got to go out to Stack Overflow and try to find 10 people that will try to give me a hint as to what's going on.
Has John Skeet replied yet?
Who?
Well, John Skeet is kind of famous to, I think, every programmer who goes to Stack Overflow, because if John Skeet has answered in a Stack Overflow thread, that's usually what you want to do.
Programmer jokes.
I don't go there enough.
You did there.
Yeah,
I didn't.
But yeah, that's an advantage too.
But how do you balance the creative side and the programmer side? Because the stereotype is that the creative guys are all sitting with their iMacs and their berets and their cappuccinos and just typing out the story, and the engineers work out the shit.
That's the beauty of Cortex. That's the beauty of Cortex. Oh, by the way, we've decided in the spirit of renaming the company Giggle Horse, we've also renamed the Cortex engine. So we've renamed it Candy Corn. So.
I was really hoping for a giraffe in there because I
was hoping for Manowar, which is this celebrated horse that we've had on the show before, and it shares its birthday with me. So,
what a horse!
What a horse!
What a horse!
Yes, horses are nice.
So, what are you guys actually using? What I mean, Cortex sounds like it's been around for a long time. And I remember distinctly you telling me that you were working on your own adventure game engine. Is that a shoot off of your old Cortex engine, or is that a brand new engine?
No. See, when we made Cortex, we made it to where it's non-genre specific.
Mm-hmm.
So it will handle anything that you want to toss to it. And so what we did is we made a plugin that is called Legend, and everything that you do in Legend is it's a big WYSIWYG, and so everything that you build in Legend, you can actually just take the Legend DLL plugin and you ship that with the engine, and when the engine starts up and it looks at the game, it says, oh, I need the Legend DLL, and so it just pulls that in, and the Legend DLL has everything that is uniquely specific to point-and-click adventure games.
Kind of like Adventure Creator with Unity.
I haven't played with that, but...
Neither have I. It looks very complicated, but that's like an adventure game plugin for Unity. That's all I know.
Let's say for all intents and purposes that it is the same thing. None of us know, but we've just decided it is.
But to jump to...
Yeah.
I don't want to get too technical, but this is... What we did was we made the entire engine based on what's called finite automata, which, this is one of the things that, you learn in computer science that you wouldn't learn elsewhere. And so everything in the game engine is state machine based. And so we can literally swap out states as entire huge sections of code. So what it will do is, whatever game that we decide that we want to, there's always a game loop. You're familiar with the game loop where you're constantly in a loop.
Yeah, well, finally we're back on track, because when you started talking, my beret just melted over my head, and now it's inflated again. Now I'm back.
All finite automata does is it allows us to where we can build custom chunks of code that will magically get plugged into that loop dynamically on the fly.
So kind of like injection.
Yeah. And so if you want to switch to a completely different game, it will just, swap those pieces out for something completely different.
Right.
Wow. It's like playing with Legos. I'm trying to put this in metaphor.
Exactly.
Well, I have the biggest programming boner, because that's the shit I get off on. That
exactly
modular approach.
Yeah, it's exactly like Legos. If you get Legos, if you think of the Cortex engine, it's basically like getting the regular shitty, boring block Lego set that has nothing, just blocks.
Right, the boilerplate stuff.
Yeah, and in 2 minutes you're bored because you can build a wall, and you give a shit.
I will build a wall, and it will be the... go on.
Yeah, so instead what you can do is you can go out and spend another $150 and get another 20-piece Lego set.
Which has floors.
Yeah, this is the sci-fi set, and it's it's got radar dishes and all this other shit, and see, that just plugs right in. So that's exactly how it works. It's exactly like a Lego set.
Right.
Cool, I understood something. Yay!
Philistine.
Yeah, I know. I'm the beret guy. I just want to write funny dialogue.
We'll have to make you an award now.
But what
okay.
I mean, we've kind of touched upon...
Now, the creative side, you were asking about the creative side.
Oh dear Lord!
Because I came from the commercial art side of things. I kind of didn't understand, like, even from the beginning, I never understood why it was like there was this whole war between, like, oh, the programmers hate the artists and the artists hate the programmers. I'm like, well, I don't even understand that, because if you lose either side, you ain't going to get a game done. So I don't get why you guys hate each other so much. So one of the things that Cortex does is it allows the artists to have control over a lot of the content. Are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all here. We're fascinated.
I heard
listening intently.
There was this popping noise over here, like, Skype was, doing a tapping the call or some shit.
No, that was me. I was typing. I'm telling Gareth that this is a great episode. It's all over the place, and we love it.
Yeah, it is really good.
Yeah,
so
I'm all over
no popping noise. We're still here.
Yeah,
we're
I'm
just
good.
waiting for you to lay the wisdom down on us.
Yes, please.
Well, for example, if an artist goes and they make, like, say, like a sprite, and he moves it, like, I don't know, 18 frames a second for a walk cycle. Like, they got 18 frames a second for a walk cycle for I don't know what reason, but they do. Mm-hmm. And then they go back over to the programmer, and then the programmer is like, well, the engine's running at, 60 frames a second, so fuck you. You have to go back and figure out how to do that, because I don't want to write any code to try to figure out how to translate. There's just all this. There's all this noise, or maybe the artist wants to slow down the walking pace and make it 16 frames a second or whatever. They can do all of that. They can literally go into the engine, into the WYSIWYG, and you can dial down and say, okay, I want this sprite to walk at 18 frames a second. I want this blinking light to blink at 5 frames a second, and I want this thing to operate at full-on 60 frames a second. And you can do that. And you can dial that stuff down individually, so that way, if you make something in 3D Studio or something like that, you can actually make it look exactly like you had it animated when you made it. And you don't have to worry about anybody, climbing up your ass and yelling at you because you didn't conform to, like, some sort of metric that they had in their mind.
But what does the line go between giving the creative people too much freedom? I mean, from a musical background, the interesting thing about making albums with limitations is, okay, for this album, I'm only going to use like a toy snare drum I found in my parents' closet or something. Like, limitations force you to think creatively. If you have too much freedom, then all of a sudden you get numb because you can literally do everything. Where do you stand on that?
Well, we know that the engine basically has all the crap that it needs to have to do whatever we want, no matter what it is. So what we do is I take a stance where I let the art side try to figure out what's going to happen in the game, and then we'll try to figure out how to do that in code later. I really hate it where they set down the limitations and say, this is what we can do, so you're going to have to come up with a scenario to where, to where this can happen. If you just let the art department just say, okay, let's come up with concepts, and then let's, figure out how to animate that and what it's going to look like, as if they can do it in 3D Studio or Blender or whatever, exactly how they want it to look. And then we'll figure out exactly how to get the engine. And the great thing about Cortex is if something's not there to do exactly what you want it to do, you can actually create a custom DLL that it will just suck right into the chain, and it will become part of it. It's like an amoeba.
Okay, yeah. I'm not in any way advocating that you just box people in, to your own whim. And I kind of like the idea that you have all the tools in the world, and then you set up your own parameters, and then to fuel the creative juices, you just go, we're gonna stick to that. Actually, we are sadly coming up towards the end times, as if the White House didn't already get us there.
That's a little bit.
Well, of course we're at the end times. We just voted Trump in, so something shitty's gonna happen.
Exactly. So I do want to hear from the person who's characteristically silent, but fueled by the love of Paul Masson.
Indeed, yes.
Well, have you got anything to add, sir? Because I know that you have dabbled in programming.
No, I mean, I completely agreed with the whole kind of people getting lazy and wanting to jump in and just do the thing that they want to do. Because I've had plenty of sort of amateur experience of trying to put together various bits of simulations or adventure games and getting a little bit further in and then realizing that I might actually need to learn some kind of computer coding beyond what I already know, and then putting it down for 10 years and maybe picking it up again at some other point. I think what's really interesting about engines as well is, of course, they've got quite a long history in adventure games. The various studios developing their own sort of proprietary engines like AGI, SCI, Scum, those sorts of things. And it's really fascinating to just sort of see how that's kind of done at a very base level and getting the sort of the first-hand experience from somebody that's actually done it. It's been really good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess a question that I would have was that if you're used to just sitting down in the engine room and just code the thing from scratch, because fuck limitations, I have the tools, I have the power, I can do whatever I want. At some point, Randall, do you just sit there and go, okay, I have to stop now and actually make a game, because I could sit here and fine tune and develop this thing till the end of time. At some point, I have to get a game out. Where does the line go?
Well,
no one knows.
Yeah, exactly. As a matter of fact, I can't actually say names, but I know of a particular game where they kept trying to change the engine to try to keep up with competitors. Like every time they would build every time they would build this unknown game, which I'm not going to say the name of, and then they kept having feature creep where they saw what other first-person shooters were doing. They kept creeping it. And before long, this this game took 7 years to build, and actually longer than years.
Yeah, I thought I had that one pegged.
I thought I had that one as well, but 7 years was an
I don't know
undershot.
what game. I'm just talking, purely speculative.
Yeah, hypothetical.
It wasn't the game that I was thinking of, because that one took considerably longer. But yeah, I see what you mean.
And then in the end, you end up scrapping everything that you built, and you just hire an outside source to do it.
Yes. No libel.
That's very restrained for us. Well done, lads.
Yeah, we didn't even have to bust out the editing scissors.
So I mean, I don't fault the people that were working on it, because I can understand. Like, I know what it's like when we were making Filbert, and then all of a sudden Captain Claw came out, and we're like, oh well, shit, they've got this, that, and the other, and it's like, well, we've got to put that in our engine, otherwise, it's like. So I've come to the conclusion now. I think it's only something that you can come to out of years of experience and wisdom, to where you got to realize that people are playing these games to have fun, and they're not playing these games to write a review about your game comparatively to other games that they've played. Mm-hmm. So we try to focus now on, are we making a game that's fun and not stupid and won't suck? Because if that's the case, there are games out there that look ridiculously horrible, and they've made $1 million. If you look at that game, I made a game with zombies in it. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but the guy made over $1 million, and it is.
The Five Nights at Freddy's games.
It was an Xbox indie game or whatever.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, I don't know that one, but something like that. You just have a simple idea and you run with it, and even though it looks like crap, the gameplay is fantastic, or it just sucks people in.
Just captures the moment, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then you end up.
And I'm probably gonna
take
a lot of flack for saying this. I know I'll probably take a lot of flack for saying this, but one of the games that I've never really quite. This is a perfect example of making a game really super polished doesn't mean it's going to sell 1 billion copies. My case in point is look at Minecraft. Basically, it's 3D ANSI graphics is what we got. That's what it is. This is ANSI graphics like what we used for BBSs back in the 80s, except now they've made the shit 3D.
Yeah. And the gameplay is great, and you can build just about anything. It doesn't have to. Look at a game like Undertale. It's not the crispest graphics ever. It looks like something was slapped together in MS Paint, but it plays beautifully.
So what we do now to avoid the whole feature creep thing is that we do a concept phase, and then we do we do a concept phase, and then we do a requirement specification. And that's where we this is one of the things that, like, most, when you're asking what people should learn, like people that are jumping in now, they should get like a book like called Code Complete, where it actually talks about, like, you need to document, flowchart out how you're going to build this thing before you ever even sit down in front of a computer. Mm. And so what we do is we outline, like, okay, it will have like single player capability. We literally bullet item every single thing that we want this game to do. Once we're done, we freeze it. We freeze it completely. So somebody comes up a week later and says, oh, you know, it'd be great. It'd be great if you actually fucking told us last week when we were talking about this shit. That's what would be great. So yeah, you can go back and, you know, check off one of these checkboxes for the other 50 things that we said that we're going to do. And the thing that you want to do, that will be in version 2 now. So... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ron Gilbert talks about this in the development of Thimbleweed Park, where he also wrote his own engine from scratch. He has, like, code has been locked off, and now the text has been locked off, so now we can do voice recording. And, you know, he has all these lock-off points where if he comes up with a great idea after that, it's just like, well, too bad. That's one for the next game.
Yeah, you gotta...
that level of self-discipline takes a lot of training, though, and a lot of experience, as you've said.
Do you know who Michael Abrish is?
No, sorry, I don't.
Okay, Michael Abrish he's the one that wrote, like, the Zen of assembly language, and he was...
that's why I don't know him.
He was one of the engine coders for Quake, and he worked at, like, the engines. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. And, well, he told me one time, because I had this problem, and he said something that stuck with me 20 years ago. He said, you know, the most perfect game in the world that you'll ever make is the one you'll never ship.
How prophetic and depressing and true.
Yeah, and I think about
that. The same is true of academic articles, let me tell you.
Yeah, so anytime somebody's like, well, we got to fix... Look, okay, it only breaks like 1 out of 100 times, ship it. Who gives a shit? Because, I mean... And I think back to, like, Tomb Raider when it first came out, like when Tomb Raider was first released. Holy shit, I don't think I could play that game for 7 seconds without it crashing. And I'm like, how did this get past testing? And they made like $1 billion off of it. And
because of polygonal tits.
Polygonal mammalian protuberances.
Yeah, and that's EA's release model. EA's release model is, oh shit, it compiles? Well, it's time to repull it. It's time to release.
Well, now they can do patches
and shit. Time to add tits.
I'd love to see one EA game to where it would come out and it didn't have like a gigabyte patch the moment, like, when you get home. It didn't have, like, you know, like, you have to download 4 gigs of patches. It's like, because your shit won't work otherwise. It's like, I mean...
Yeah, and I actually had a conversation with Dennis Dyack of Silicon Knights for another podcast recently, and it was like in the olden days when you shipped the product, if it had any bugs in it and you needed to fix those, tough fucking luck. There's no such thing as a patch. You don't mail out floppy disks to anyone.
You had to make bulletproof code. Filbert Fledgling is so bulletproof that there's an extremely mass following of the game in Russia. We've probably sold more bootleg copies.
Not to be Russia confused with bootleg copies.
Well, no, it's been pirated. I mean, they pirated it and they pressed it into CDs. We've been trying to get a hold of a Russian version of Filbert for I don't know how long, but they have them in mass over there. I'd like to just have one for my collection.
Oh, nice. Sadly, this is about all that we can. Now, I just want this to go on forever, but sadly, we do have to cap it because
libel alert, libel alert, libel alert, libel alert, libel alert.
That's dangerously uncomfortable to the truth. Actually, you may want to cut that one out.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me just do that again, and you can cut that one out. I'm so sorry, dude. All right, I'm just gonna let Gareth stop giggling, and then I'll just do that again.
I'll mute myself. That'll make it easy.
Well, you're welcome to check back with us in I don't know, in 6 months or a year, and see if we haven't committed suicide making this game.
Well, I guess on that uplifting note, I think sadly it is time to go. I could happily have this go on forever because I think this is one of the more chaotic, but also one of the funniest episodes we've done in recent memory. If I want to pat ourselves on the back, so I am going to pull the stop sign here. Sadly, Randell, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much. And is there anything that you would like to plug, like websites, social media pages, anything that people can throw money at you?
Just go to facebook.com/Giggle Horse.
Giggle Horse, as in a horse that is giggling, like Gareth was.
Horse.
Right now, all of our domain names are under siege, so like all of our websites are pretty much they're in chaos right now. So I don't think you can go to any of the websites right now. But it doesn't matter because we don't have anything to sell right now.
But in the future, gigglehorse.com.
Yep,
so yeah,
GiggleHorseGames.com, either one. Neuron Games.com.
And you're actually working on an adventure game project. I can say that much right now.
Oh yeah. We're working. It's a game called it's Absolute Zero.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's going to be.
So keep a lookout for that.
It will be space based.
Oh yes. Oh, we do love us some space games on this show.
Watch out for libel.
So yeah, please have a look at that. And for us, I guess I'm trying to wrap this up because Fred has to be going. So I'm just going to get into the exit spiel real quick and then say goodbye to you fine gentlemen. So please, if you have time to spare, do go to our website at backseatdesigners.com where you can subscribe to the show and read our blog posts and check out links to stuff that we've mentioned in this episode. You can find us on Twitter at BS Designers. We have a Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/backseat designers. And you can also go and donate to Fred's Wank Fund, patreon.com/backseat designers. Did I leave anything out? No, I don't think I did. We do have a YouTube channel as well, but who cares? So, on that fantastic bombshell, say goodbye, Fred.
Goodbye.
And
goodbye.
Say you'll get your turn. And say goodbye, Gareth.
Goodbye.
And say goodbye, dear Mr. Trulson.
Hey, goodbye, dear Mr. Trulson.
No more for today.